Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
To listen without ads, head over to patreon.com/rightandwrong.
Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the
it.
writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing is
so some readers love that, and some readers are like, "But I wanted more of this." So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. With me today is the winner of the 2021 Kindle Storyteller Award, a crime author who found incredible success self-publishing her work online. It's Rachel McLean. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me along.
Thanks so much for joining me. Let's start with the recent and exciting news that is the first of your novels getting a physical print run. I tried to tally up the total number of your novels. I counted 27. Is that right?
I think I'm on about 35 now.
Oh my goodness.
But a few of those aren't crime novels though, so they don't really count in a way. They were the books that I wrote when I was learning my craft and sort of working out how things all work. And then I started writing crime in 2020.
Oh, okay. Those were the teething books.
Yeah, exactly.
So all of those have been published digitally until now. How does it feel to have physical copies of your books?
Yeah, I did have paperback copies because I used print on demand. Right. So there are various companies where you can get print on demand books printed that are then available in bookshops and also on Amazon. So, I mean, for example, which was really surprising, the Waterstones in Bournemouth, my book, The Corfe Castle Murders, in its print on demand edition, the edition that I published, was actually their top selling book over Christmas last year. Because I have a lot of fans in Bournemouth. But obviously having this paperback deal with Hera means that I can get into shops that I can't get into myself because I don't have the kind of reach that they do. It means the print run, obviously, because it's offset printing instead of print on demand. They've done a much bigger print run than I would ever do. Yeah. And it's given me opportunities to reach new readers, which is great.
Okay. Is it kind of been a bit of a learning experience? This is the first time you've done a sort of big print run?
It has. I think the interesting thing, because I've started printing some of my own books in the same way, so doing smaller print runs, because bookshops much prefer books printed in that way because they get better margins on them. And it's very, very hard for a bookshop to make a profit on a print-on-demand book because printing one book costs a lot more than printing one book of a number of thousand. So I've learned a huge amount about the jargon. There's some really bizarre terms that are used to describe the parts of a book. I mean, for example, I'm having some hardbacks done, and I learned the word wibbling, which is the cover of the cover of the case of the book, which is the book itself, as against the jacket, which is the paper cover that wraps around the book. And I was like, what on earth is this wibbling? And it's some historical word. I'm not still entirely sure exactly which bit it refers to, but I was just told to say, what colour do you want the wibbling? Once I know what it is, I can tell you what colour I want it. But yeah, it's been really interesting, and I'm learning more about how distribution works to bookshops, and how bookshops work, because my model up to now has predominantly been about ebooks and selling through Amazon. And I've learned how the Amazon ecosystem works and how the Amazon algorithm works and how I can work with that to reach more readers and sell books. Right. I'm learning a whole new side to the publishing industry, which is fascinating.
And we're going to get onto the kind of your experiences with like self-publishing and Ackroyd and things like that. But before we do, I thought it'd be fun just to go back and talk about your writing. When did you first start writing stories?
I probably can't remember when I wrote my first story because I've been writing stories since I was in primary school. I remember I wrote my first serialized stories, so effectively little novels, when I was about 10. In English classes in school. And then I went to secondary school, carried on doing creative writing for a year or two, and then they stopped getting you to write creatively. It's all about essays and that kind of thing. So I had the sort of fictional creativity knocked out of me, and then didn't write fiction for quite a long time, but was always writing. So every job I've ever had, I've always been the person on the team who does the writing. So I've written training materials, I've written speeches, I've written press releases, I've edited pamphlets and journal articles, all sorts of things. So I always really enjoyed writing. And then I was working for the Environment Agency about 20 years ago now, and I was in charge of commissioning companies to deliver personal development skills and communication skills. And I had to go on a writing course in order to check it out and see if it was something that we wanted to deliver to a lot of our staff. And on this writing course, you had to think of a long piece of writing that you were intending to do for work and plan it. And I didn't have a long piece of writing I was intending to do for work. So I thought, you know what? I'll plan a novel. So I spent the day planning my first novel, A House Divided, which was a political thriller. And then at the end of it, thought, right, well, I better write it now. And it's great because the guy who ran the course, Rob Ashton, I'm still in touch with him. And he was so pleased when I finally published it. It took me 15 years to publish it. I had two children in the meantime, and sort of life got in the way. But yeah, that was what got me started on writing novels again. And as I say, the first one took a long time, but now I'm significantly faster with my output.
Yes, I mean, I would say so, given that you've 30 plus novels. It's a hell of a lot of novels. So that original novel, self-published, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I originally queried agents, and I went to the Festival of Writing in York, where you can do speed dating with agents. And there were also people there who were self-published who were talking about it. And I thought, you know what? I like the idea of this. I've always run my own business. I've spent most of my career self-employed. Mm-hmm. So I'm quite comfortable with the aspects of publishing that are about business management and about marketing. In fact, I really enjoy that. And I also like to have control over when I can release books because I do write quite fast. And the traditional publishing model generally is to release a book a year. Hera and I are working on a book every 6 months for the rest of the series as it goes on. Yeah. But I wanted to be able to write a book every 6 months or every 3 months. I mean, I've had years when I've been releasing a book every 2 months, and indie publishing gives you the option to do that. And it keeps readers happy because readers want more books. I get emails from readers the day after a new release saying, great, read it, loved it, when's the next one out? And I think, give me some time. But I think there's a model in traditional publishing which is based around how many books can you physically print and get into bookshops, which spreads out the release of an author's books. And unless you're Stephen King or James Patterson, you can't just say to your publisher, well, I'm going to write another one, put it out there. But as an indie, you can do that, and you can develop the series in a way that you work on sort of by communication with your readers rather than having to go through the whole process of working with the editor and also the marketing team in the publishing company and all the rest of it. But having said that, to be successful, you do need to have quite a good head for how the publishing market works and what reader preferences are and that kind of thing. Because it's very easy to publish a book. Writing a book isn't so easy, but publishing is quite easy. But finding readers for it is much more challenging.
Okay, so you were quite confident about sort of just general business etiquette and processes, but I assume there would have been then a learning curve of actually kind of getting into publishing and being like, okay, so how does this work?
Yeah, there really was. So the first 3 years that I was publishing was when I was writing books that were in my heart and I wanted to write, and I hadn't really thought about what the readership would be for them, and they didn't really fit very well in any of the genres. But while I was writing those books and attempting to market those books, I learned a huge amount about how publishing works and how book marketing works. And I think, and you know, I failed effectively with those books because they didn't sell well enough for me to be able to make a living from them. But it was really, really useful experience, because then in 2020, when I decided that I wanted to write in a genre where I knew there were lots of readers and I wanted to meet the expectations of those readers more effectively, I already had that experience in learning how to advertise books, essentially. So then when I started writing a series, the Zoe Finch series, which was something that readers could instantly say, oh, yes, I like these authors, so therefore I'll like this. And I already had the advertising chops to get it out there and encourage people to buy it. So it took off really quickly, that series. And I haven't looked back since.
I think the thing that from the outside seems like the most daunting is, like you say, it's hard to find the readers. It's that marketing aspect. What was the kind of first things you did where it was like, right, this is how I'm going to market them? Did you have like a marketing strategy?
I did, and it was to train the Amazon algorithm to work for me. Okay. So although advertising is really useful for selling books, you can't expect to get every sale from an advert. It's just too expensive, because the cost of getting a click on an advert gets higher and higher all the time. So what I did was I started by running Facebook ads, because they're much more likely to actually deliver. And I ran Facebook ads and tested different targets and different content in my ads, found some ads that were working, and then really slowly, started off on like a couple of quid a day, but then really slowly raised the budget so that there were people going to my book page on Amazon and buying the book. So Amazon could then see that people were buying this book and there was an interest in it. Then I started running Amazon ads, which are more expensive. So you need to know that you're going to get some traction with Amazon ads. And what I did with those was I targeted the authors whose books were similar to mine, but who were selling not the huge sellers, but the people who were selling just above where I wanted to be, or just around where I wanted to be. So I targeted other indie authors, people who were with the digital first publishers like Bookture and Joffy, because they have a lot of readers in common with indie authors, because they release fast and they focus on ebooks. So I targeted those authors, and what that did was the more and more people who were buying my books who'd bought, for example, an Angela Marson's book, Amazon was learning that if somebody was a fan of Angela Marson's, they might be interested in my book, and therefore recommending my book to those people. And that worked really well for me. I could see from feedback I was getting from friends who were getting emails from Amazon recommending my books to them that it was picking up on that, and it was encouraging people to buy my books for me. So I think that was what built the foundation of my career. And my focus now, although I do still advertise, but my focus now is on nurturing existing readers, building a relationship with them, encouraging them to read through all the books, making them feel part of a story world. I do reader events where people argue about whether or not they like Leslie, my main character in the Dorset Crime books. And it's great, because I just sit back and think, you all think she's real, and she's real in my head. But clearly I've done my job, because people love her. And so a lot of the work now is on building relationships with readers, keeping in touch with them. And that's one of the beauties of being indie, or hybrid as I am now, with a mix of indie and traditional publishing, is that you tend to have a closer relationship with your readers, because that is the only way to get your books out there, is to appeal directly to readers. And I think long term, that's a really useful thing. And it's also a really nice thing to have. It's lovely to talk to readers and get feedback from them on my books.
Yeah. What's your main point of contact with your readers?
At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
It's my book club, which is, I have two aspects to that. So I have two newsletters, one for readers and one for audiobook listeners. So at the end of each book, there'll be a link to a story or some information about how I research the books or some character notes or something like that. And it'll be specific to that book. They'll either click on that or they'll go to it in their browser. And then they'll get some emails from me with some information about that book. And then they'll get, once they've sort of gone through that, they'll get weekly updates from me with news about my research trips, my writing process, what books are coming out, anything that's really going on in my writing life, really.
Okay. And you do have some kind of like back and forth there where they can talk to you, you can talk to them.
Yeah, I get a lot of replies to those emails. I get a lot of people replying to me, people telling me what they've been doing as well, people telling me about the books they've enjoyed, people giving feedback on how much they look forward to getting my emails, because I deliberately make them really chatty. So I don't make them salesy. So most of the emails are not buy this book. They're more, hello, this is me. I'm in Birmingham or Dorset or Scotland or wherever researching a book. This is what I've been up to, telling some funny stories about things I saw there and how it's inspired story ideas. And I think readers love getting a glimpse into the life of an author, because I think a lot of readers would like to be an author. And so it's something that you can share with people and sort of build that sense of a community around your readers.
Absolutely. And I think it also, by kind of knowing the writer, engaging with them like on a more personal level, it adds a new depth to the story itself, because you're kind of, where this has come from, and you'll kind of see inklings of the kind of the real writer in the kind of turn of phrase and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And also in some of the character arcs and in the locations that I choose to write about, I've got a personal connection to a lot of those locations, which I talk about a lot. I'm currently working on a coffee table book, which has got a chapter for each of my Dorset books. And in those chapters, there are lots of beautiful photographs of Dorset and also sort of family snapshots of mine, pictures of me on the beach when I was 2 and that kind of thing. But also lots of personal anecdotes and stories about why I chose to write about that location and possibly an incident that inspired the crime in that location or something like that, or an account of the day I went to research the book there and what I saw and what happened and the bits that didn't make it into the book. Yeah. But at the same time, also talking about Dorset and the locations and how much I love them and recommending that people go there and providing information on where you can walk and that kind of thing. So that's something that's going to be out in the autumn, and I'm hoping that it's the kind of thing that fans will want to buy for Christmas or ask people to buy them for Christmas, because it's designed to be a beautiful book with lots of gorgeous photos.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. You should get a commission from the Dorset Tourism Board.
Yes, I do occasionally have people who email me and say, I went to Dorset last week to do a tour of all your book locations. And they drive around the different locations for the different books. And that's amazing to think that my writing has inspired somebody to go and visit places that I love.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to get back onto a bit of publishing stuff here and ask about Ackroyd. So Ackroyd Publishing is your publisher, which is also that you created. Yeah. Did you create it before you published anything, or had you already published some things and then decided that this was a good idea?
I already had a company because I'd been working as a freelance technical writer for quite a while. Okay. And that was just in my name. And then I decided quite early on that I needed an imprint. So I was using Ackroyd as an imprint. And then I decided to change the company name to Ackroyd as well, because it's getting there's not just me in the company now. So I have other authors who I co-write with, So a few of the series are me and another author writing together. We're also starting to publish other authors as well. So we've got a couple of women's fiction authors on our books. And I've got a team of people who run the publishing, marketing, all different aspects of the process of getting the books out. So I wanted to give it that sense of being a proper publisher, because it effectively is now. It's not just for my books. So that, and it also helps because it gives you that sort of credibility as part of something that's bigger than just one person. And particularly having a team means that I've got access to skills that I don't have, and also the time. I don't have the time to do it all. When you get to 30 odd books, doing things like getting them all translated or producing large print versions of them all takes quite a lot of time. And having a team who will help me do that is really, really helpful.
And am I right in thinking Ackroyd is now publishing books by other authors, not just you?
Yes, so we've got Hazel Ward, who writes women's fiction set in Birmingham. She's got a series that's currently 5 books that we're republishing, we're relaunching this summer.
Okay.
And then we've got Sally Brooks, who writes sapphic women's fiction. She's written sort of political romances in the past, but she's just written the first in a rom-com series that is out next week. And she also happens to be my wife. So that was how it started, because she and I had a conversation about whether because she's been an indie publisher, she's been a self-publisher herself for quite a long time, which is how we met. Okay. And then when she was getting this book to the point where it was ready for publishing, we talked about whether Ackroyd could publish it. And then that then became, well, let's take on other authors as well. So I think with where we're publishing other authors, where it's not co-written with me, we're going to focus on women's fiction. Mm-hmm. And then the crime fiction will either be books written by me or by me with somebody else. Okay, right.
So you're sort of, you're not, I wouldn't say you're actively looking for new authors to
We're
publish,
really not, no. I want to work with authors who I already know are really good writers, but could benefit from working with us. Okay. So Hazel, for example, I've known Hazel for many years, and I've been a beta reader on a lot of her books. So I know that her books are really good. And I knew that we could make something more of them with more of a marketing push. But yeah, it's not something where we're actually actively inviting submissions. It's more of a process of very slow, steady growth of our list as and when we come across authors who we think would be a good fit.
Yeah, it sounds very organic the way you're doing it.
Yeah.
And is the sort of goal to, if you are going to continue to add authors kind of slowly, gradually, is the goal to sort of find authors who had a similar start to you? So like they've been self-published and you think that...
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be largely authors who have been self-publishing for a while, so they understand how some of the commercial aspects of publishing work. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's not something that they're interested in pursuing long term. They're more interested in the writing. Yeah. And people who have probably not necessarily already written enough that we know that they'll be writing good books. Because while we have editors on the team, we don't do a lot of editorial work with our writers because they're people who've already got experience. So it is, as you say, it's very organic, and it's something that I don't want to grow too fast, because I never really saw myself being running a publishing company, but I saw myself as a writer. But as it happens, I really enjoy running a publishing company, but I do need to make sure that I also maintain the time for writing my own books too.
Yeah, the dream that most people have is that I want to be a writer and I want to have my books published, and then here you are accidentally becoming a publisher yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. Accidental publisher.
Yeah. Before we head to the desert island, I just wanted to quickly bring it back to your writing a bit, which, like we've talked about, mainly focused on crime and thrillers. I always like to ask, are there any other genres that you've thought about maybe exploring one day?
I quite like alternative history and sort of high concept science fiction.
Oh, okay.
So I've written a bit of sort of near future dystopias. I did have a nasty habit of writing things that then came true. I wrote a few political thrillers and then had to go back and rewrite them because Donald Trump would do what was in my books.
Oh dear.
But so, to be honest, my writing group sort of banned me from writing those because they kept saying, you've got to write something happy. So I like writing that. I also quite fancy having a go at romance at some point, but I would definitely do it under a pen name. But to be honest, I'm really busy with the crime. We've got between me and my co-authors, we've got 5 series that are either already in train or are, on the horizon. Each of which will have 2 books a year released. So that's plenty to be getting on with.
And there's obviously, I've spoken to a few self-publishing authors, and like you see what kind of does really well, the people who are the really big successes in self-publishing.
Yeah.
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
It does seem like crime is the kind of most successful genre within that space.
In the UK, it definitely is. In the US, it's quite different. Science fiction and fantasy does better in the US, and romance does incredibly well across both the UK and the US. And romantasy is the hot new thing. So that sort of merging of fantasy and romance. And there are some authors who are selling in the millions and millions of copies in the US in particular, because there's such a big market there. Crime is becoming harder, I would say, to break into in the UK because there are so many crime authors now. There are a lot of people who looked at people like me, J.D. Kirk, Mark Dawson, quite high-profile crime authors who started indie publishing and have started publishing their own. And some of them are definitely, up and coming and are doing really well and are going to be overtaking us. But others are finding it much harder to get traction because it's quite a crowded marketplace. But there is a really hungry audience of readers. So I don't think it's impossible. But I think it's probably harder to launch in crime now than it was. Because there is more competition, and also because advertising just gets more expensive all the time. So I think there are there's more variety of ways that you can reach readers now than there were 4 years ago when I started writing crime. And I think one of the interesting things for authors is deciding what interests you and what methods you'll use. So, for example, direct selling is going to be huge for authors. I've got my own website where I sell my books, and I'm finding now that the growth of direct sales, particularly of audiobooks, is really fast because people aren't really prepared to pay what they have to pay on Audible for an audiobook. Writers aren't at all happy with the royalties they get from Audible because we only get 25%. And so I can sell an audiobook to a reader for half the price than they'd pay on Audible, and I'm still making twice the money. So it's something that's really going to grow, and it's getting easier and easier to sell paperbacks direct. There are companies like BookVault who do print on demand and hook up to Shopify directly. So if somebody orders a paperback on your site, you don't have to keep boxes of them in your garage or anything like that. It'll go straight to BookVault. They'll print it and send it out. And if you're doing larger print runs, gardeners do that as well. So there's some real opportunities. There's a lot of people using TikTok or BookTok and selling direct there because there's TikTok shop. So there's a lot of opportunities, and there's quite a lot to sort of wade through and get your head around if you're starting as an indie author. And I guess my advice would be to do the things that you enjoy, because if you don't enjoy it, you might as well just go and get a job that's got a decent salary and holiday and a pension and that kind of thing, because it's much more secure. Being a writer is very insecure. I bought my house a couple of years ago, and the mortgage companies didn't like the fact that my income went up and down.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain to them that, when you have a book launch, your income goes up. That's how it works in publishing. And I said to them, well, if you average out my income, it's fine for what you need for multipliers. But they didn't like the fact that it was unstable. They said, well, what if it just goes down and never goes up again? And I said, well, I've got another book out. I know how many pre-orders I've got. Yeah. So the sort of traditional world out there finds it hard to understand how we operate, but it can feel quite risky at sometimes because, you can't guarantee that people are going to read your next book.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's whether you're self-published or like even being traditionally published, you are essentially freelancing. Like you have a book contract, which could be like 1 book, 2 books. In rare occasions, it's like more than that. But like you are essentially a freelance writer, and every time you finish your contract, you're looking for another contract.
Yeah, and I think in some ways, if you're traditionally published, it's more precarious than being indie because you have less control. Yeah. So, and you also don't have direct access to your readers. So the thing that scares us all the most as indie publishers is if Amazon shut down our account. So there's something called Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP, which is how you publish through Amazon. And I have a friend, Mark Recklow, and his account was shut down and he wasn't given a good reason for it. It was one of those things where the algorithm had picked up something that he hadn't broken the rules in the way they thought he had. And they eventually reinstated his account. But in the meantime, his entire business was gone. Yeah. And so I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of authors are looking more at direct sales, because certainly as a backup, they're there. If something happens to Amazon, you've got alternative ways of earning money. And there are authors like Joanna Penn, who's really influential in the indie space and runs a fantastic podcast called The Creative Pen. And she is evangelical about the idea of having multiple sources of income as an author so that you're not reliant on just Amazon or one other source. Yeah,
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Just to diversify that kind of income flow, just in case, as you say, something happens to whatever the platform is that you're doing. Yeah, awesome. That's really useful stuff. Really good to know for anyone who's like thinking about getting into indie publishing, self-publishing. And that brings us to the desert island. So, Rachel, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book do you hope that it would be?
This is a hard question, I have to say, because any writer will tell you that we all read very, very widely and we have lots of favourite books. Readers find it really hard to understand the fact that I don't read crime all the time. I read all sorts. But the book I've chosen is Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, it's a good hefty tome. I've got it. I've managed to find it on my shelf. It's 600 pages long, so it kept me busy for a while. Yeah. But it's a fascinating book because it's got timey-wimey aspects to it. It's about a girl who is born in 1918 and she keeps dying and coming back to life effectively. And it's almost like she gets a do-over of her life. So initially she dies as a baby and then she dies as a young child. And there are various causes of her death which are, they link with the history of the time. So, she dies from the flu in the big flu pandemic after the First World War, for example. And then as time goes on, she obviously manages to live for longer. And she doesn't know that she's had another life, but she seems to subconsciously know because she manages to avoid the thing that killed her last time. Okay. But she ends up, there are 2 parallel lives towards the end, which take place around the Second World War. One of which she's in part of Hitler's inner circle, and in another of which she's serving in, I think, the Wrens or something in the UK. So very different lives and how her paths diverge. She's also got a brother who features quite a lot, and he's got a spin-off book, which is a wonderful book too. That's a much more straightforward book structurally. It hasn't got the sort of time and reliving and that kind of thing. But I love this book because it's about a period of history that's really interesting. It's told from sort of deep third person, I think it is. I remember, is it first person? But anyway, so you really get into her point of view and you really get to know what her life is like. But it's also got that sort of slightly, it's not really time because she's not traveling in time, but it's this alternate history, the idea that somebody can relive their life multiple times. And I love that sort of thing. I always find it really interesting when authors play with anything to do with time, or with, being able to live your life differently, or anything that's sort of slightly not the standard sort of passage of time in a book. So that's my book I would take with me, is Life After Life by Kate Atkinson.
Yeah, it sounds like a really interesting twist on the sort of idea of reincarnation and the kind of different paths that can lead to. Yeah, because she's, instead of being reincarnated into another body at the time that she dies, she just starts again. Yeah, interesting. It's like a sort of like a Groundhog Day thing, but like progressively moving forwards as opposed to being frozen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, I have some more questions about self-publishing as well as Rachel's writing process, but that will be in the extended episode exclusive to my lovely Patreon subscribers.
His newsletters are really funny and he gets a lot of engagement from them. Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. So thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on the podcast and telling us all about your writing and publishing. It's been really, really fascinating hearing about your kind of journey in the industry.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
And if anyone listening wants to find out more about Rachel, you can, the best place to find her is on the website, www.rachelmclean.com. And to support this podcast, like, follow, and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes and check out my other podcasts, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again, Rachel, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.
At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.